Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I am Chamberlain Oso here in Abuja.
Good morning. Indeed,
I'm
he
getting
is.
used to it.
Please,
Okay.
don't be surprised. 5 years down the line, you'll still have people saying, "You mean you're in Abuja now?" Meanwhile, you've been saying this like every day. I still have people who say, "Oh, you mean you're in Abuja now?" I'm like, okay, well, I've been saying this for the past 7 years. I'll keep saying it, maybe one day everyone will get the message. But yeah,
Okay.
we're in Abuja. Good morning. I'm Maokwe Yusuf, and welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Well, it's good to know that at least we in Lagos can export people to Abuja. Welcome, I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, I didn't know you are now an importer and exporter.
I was about to say the same thing.
That's very interesting. Well done. You need to get it to the MSMEs and join the association because you'll be a valuable member.
Can I register as a clearing and forwarding agent?
Well, who will be the custom agent then?
I don't know.
Well, it's not a funny situation this morning, actually, because in Lagos, quite a number of scenarios are playing out. Much as yesterday, you had some section of bus drivers commercial drivers who went on strike in Lagos, protesting some sort of activity, deductions, high-handedness on the part of their union members and the likes. So that transpired yesterday. Keeping tabs on it to see if there'll be a spillover today. But today, this morning, we're getting fillers that the MMA2 workers in MMA2 are on strike. Now, this is at Sun. I think the workers by Courtney. So they say that about 37 of them were sacked by Courtney, and as such, they were not happy with the way things have transpired, so it's going back and forth. We tried to get across to Courtney this morning to see if what the Atsan union accused them of is the case, but we haven't been able to get across to any one of them. The phones just all rang through, but that is very, very crucial because already, you know that several airports feed Lagos. MMA2 by Courtney run the MMA2, the services, the parking services, several activities there. So some are saying that those gates have been cordoned off, they've been blocked off, and so people can't access the facility. So what that means is it may have huge impacts and implications on flights in and out of Lagos. So if you've got a flight today to Lagos, or even if they're connected flights, you may need to quickly get across to your agent or anyone as soon as you can to find out if you need to make alternative plans. Already, there's a huge impact on what is going on. Ibom Air has put up a notice saying that today, their services as well will be disrupted. If I can just have a quick look at that one. I don't know, Michael, if you've seen that.
Yes, I can help you out with that. It's an urgent announcement, and it says this is to bring to the attention of our esteemed passengers and the public that our operating terminal out of Lagos, the Murtala Mohammed Airport 2, operated by Courtney Aviation Services, has been completely closed off to workers and passengers alike by the labor union very early this morning. Efforts are being made to resolve the situation. However, please note that this action will greatly impact our flight scheduled in and out of Lagos today. We greatly regret the impact of this unexpected action on your day's plans, as we urge you to kindly stay close to all our communication channels for subsequent updates. So that's what the management of Ibom Air is saying.
But there's another notice. Yeah, go ahead, though.
Well, Chamberlain, a lot of stuff is actually happening in our transport sector. And I think that, the minister, we have a minister for initially, we used to have all of the ministries of transport under one, under one umbrella. And that made a lot of sense. I think there was a minister to administer aviation, though, but all of them were under the umbrella of transport. And if you look at what has happened, 34 workers, we understand, were sacked.
37.
37 of them were fired. And it was done in a rather shoddy manner. That's what they claim, that apparently they had been negotiating over the terminal benefits of some members of staff who were supposed to have gone over some conditions of service. And it looks like, you know, the union members were taken to task the management of Courtney to do the right thing by their members, by saying that, you know, if you're going to fire them, not a problem, but just pay them off. Only for them, including the union members, to be fired as well.
Yeah.
I do not know that Courtney did not know that when he took this sort of action, this sort of reaction could take place. I mean, you're dealing with unions here, and you should know what they're capable of. One would think that as a company, they will do the right thing by their workers. I mean, that's what's been alleged. I'm sure that they will have their own side of the story. As Chairman did highlight earlier, we were unable to get through to them this morning. At least nobody has been picking our calls as we speak. Yep. But one of the things that we would have thought, you know, you could preempt you know, situations like this, to know that if, you know, members are protected under a union or they have the power to unionize, and they have done so already, one of the things you don't do is treat them with levity. I'm surprised that they did not see that this was going to happen, one. And then two, our aviation sector is currently very fragile. Yeah. Chairman, the number of issues that have bedeviled the aviation sector since COVID, a lot of airlines are struggling. The aviation sector as a whole, looking at those who provide fuel, services, etc., going to service the airplanes, lack of dollar, I mean, forex, you know, in the sector for even airlines to go and service their planes abroad, etc. The international airlines operating in that particular sector who have been threatening to, you know, cut us off for a while. And then we also have the emergence of Nigeria Air. You know, a lot of issues have just come up in the aviation sector. You have to ask, is this one more thing that we can afford? I mean, look at a few airlines who are still managing to push through, you know, who use the terminals operated by Courtney, now have their services, you know, hampered as a result of that. And Lagos, we know, is a very, very busy terminal, especially the MM2. Yeah. It handles a lot of the flights that are going into Lagos these days. So what exactly is supposed to be the plan B? For those who already have flights out of Abuja, for instance, or many other cities in the country, you know, scheduled to arrive in Lagos, especially MM2, what's supposed to happen to them this morning? You know, business meetings, etc., etc. And these is, I mean, for me, this situation was totally avoidable. And that is one area. We also saw what happened in Lagos yesterday with bus drivers saying they've had enough. In terms of the multiple taxations that they face. And so you find out that lucrative as that was, I mean, lucrative as we think that, you know, doing the downfall service job is, they also down tools. They stayed in their motor parks and refused to move yesterday. So quite a lot going on in the transport sector, even though different levels of authority have powers over the different places where this is happening. So, for instance, the downfall drivers are well within the purview of the Lagos state government, and we're still waiting to see what the reaction of the government to this will be. If they're claiming that they're being extorted, we see that all of the time. It's been a while since you were in the downfall traveling, I imagine. But I know that, you know, while in the days when we used to take, thank God, you and I went to the same school in Unilag, so we would have seen it. That's as if you were not a child with a silver spoon. Were you driving to school in those days?
Of course, I used the downfall regularly.
Yeah, okay, good.
It was one of my favorite transport modes of transport to get to school.
Well,
I loved it.
I had my baptism of fire with downfall buses when I, you know, entered school. But it was a little heart-rending to see, you know, just what, you know, what daily hassles these people went through just to ensure that, you know, they made ends meet. I kind of wonder sometimes if they didn't have to pay so much tax, if they were not taxed multiple times. I'm trying to remember the words that they use. Oh, something. Oh,
they have different ones.
They have different, you know, different payments that they have to make. I wonder if transport fares will actually come down in Lagos.
Yeah,
so I wonder what effect it will have on the fares that people pay. But yesterday, they too had enough and they parked their buses. And guess who suffered at the end of the day? Commuters.
Absolutely.
So these are things that we're already complaining of a high cost of living. We're already complaining of high transport fares, high cost of air tickets. These are things that directly impact on the welfare of citizens. Yeah. So I'm hoping that those in authority, the Minister of Aviation, for instance, maybe Minister of Labour should also be taken. I don't know whether you should be taking a look at this, Jubilee. Maybe Minister of Aviation, who understands the issues, should be, asking by Courtney what's going on. NCAA, they are the regulator in the industry. They should be speaking up to say what they're doing about it, and seeing how they can quickly resolve this to let business continue. And as for the transporters in Lagos, let us hope that the Lagos state government will be proactive. I mean, I like the time they're going on strike. It's close to elections, and we also...
So they'll get the attention?
Oh, I hope so. I believe so, that they will get the attention. And I want to imagine that, the state government should be able to, intervene in a way that will be acceptable to them and everyone. Ayo.
The fact that you both actually had to go down memory lane, kind of vehicles you used while you were in Lagos, so you've confirmed that you are exports to Abuja. Well, we're happy about that. But, very quickly to mention that, the transport system in Lagos has evolved over the years. I mean, there are those who would remember what they called Bole Kaja, what they called Molue, which has given way to the downfalls that you talked about. The Molues were the stand up and sit down that Fela sang about many years ago. And the Bole Kaja was the one that packed people and load at the same time, in the same compartment. But you see, the downfalls and the small buses that you're talking about, even though they are new, they're also being phased out. What the strategy is for government to do that, I guess we'll wait and see, because they are hoping that maybe the BRT will be the only mode of road transportation, public road transportation of its caliber in Lagos. But how it is being, discussed, I think that's another thing altogether. The extortion is not new. It's been going on for decades. Whether or not anyone is giving attention to the people, I guess that's another conversation altogether. So, yes, Malcolm, I'm with you on that. Let's hope that Lagos state government will get ahead of it, because they've been trying these transport reforms in Lagos for a while. But you see, the issue at the airport is interesting. If you look at the press release that we showed you from Atsan earlier, it shows that they have conversations ongoing with Courtney, and that the conversation hasn't broken down. And then this information comes from Courtney, targeting the chairman, the branch chairman, the secretary, treasurer, and woman leader of the union to be taken out of the system. It's only natural that the people will react. I guess we just have to wait and see, because the disruption to many people, including the elite, mostly the elite who usually go to the airports anyway, is going to be huge today. Let's see how it's resolved, guys.
Yes, indeed, Ayo, and we will keep tabs on it, and we're good to get a response pretty soon from Courtney. So just keep it locked here. We'll bring that to you as soon as we get them. But let's go right ahead and take you through some of the dailies here this morning. Let's start out with Vanguard newspaper today. Look at the big lead on the front page of Vanguard today. UK, US terror alert unneeded. Situation not so bad, ascribed to the NSA. Says citizens not in danger. Situation under control, as CDS confirms killing of terrorists who invaded Wawa cantonments in Niger. Okay, many didn't get that earlier. Traffic jam at NAS as Operation Stop and Search commences. Nigeria must not become another Afghanistan, Senator Ohabowa warns. So very, very interesting scenarios here. Some developments with Wawa cantonments in Niger. Already many have gone to town with different narratives, but that's why they need to respond as soon as possible, whenever they can, when these kind of things happen. Don't leave anything to chance. Gas flaring. FG targets $1 billion revenue from sale of 50 gas clusters. Well, that's a Vanguard investigation, they say today. Wiki-led G5 meets in Ibadan. Why does this picture look a bit... Okay.
A bit what?
Voltronish.
For lack of a better word. Eh?
Yeah, I mean, I was struggling to see what word do I use. So I thought,
Another one got into my vocabulary this morning, Voltronish.
If you know Voltron. You don't want to be...
Oh, well.
Maybe I exported that into my mouth, my vocabs this morning. You never know. He's been doing a lot of exportings today. Take a look at what's on the back page of Vanguard Sports. Nigeria's Flamingos delight in historic World Cup bronze. That's the 17 Women's World Cup 2022. That is very, very nice. Well done to the ladies, given how soon or how the time frame within which they were assembled and how they went this far, further than several other teams who, but it's just a good one for them. So that is Vanguard here today, guys.
Well, Leadership is the paper I have for you, and you also see on their front page they have the story. PMB warns police. Will of Nigerians must prevail in 2023. That is the lead story on the front page of the Leadership newspapers. Yes, the president was in Imo yesterday where the police is holding a retreat, and he gave them this warning. Says officers must not aid rigging. We have not released Labour Party manifesto yet. That is attributed to Peter Obi. That story is on page 4 as well for you. They're lumping the two stories together. Well, they're related to elections, perhaps that's why. Look at this, all the stories. This is an alert. Nigeria at risk of importing Ebola virus, NCDC warns. I didn't need to consult Per Fashiranti before Afenifere endorsed Obi. That's from Adebanjo. So there's been questions as to whether or not, you know, was Afenifere backtracking. After all, they endorsed the candidate of the Labour Party, Governor Peter Obi, on the grounds of equity and justice. That's what they did yesterday. That's what they did too. They did that before now. And then we saw much later that Afenifere was endorsing Tinubu. But then we also hear that Per Fashiranti said, oh, Tinubu just came to visit and I prayed for him. Yeah. And that if the candidate of the Labour Party comes as well, I will pray for him. I pray for anybody who comes to visit. So wow. It's really unclear. But this is how Adebanjo, who was on politics today last night, responded to that. He said, I didn't need to consult Per Fashiranti before Afenifere endorsed Obi. They also have the story, U.S. terror alert needless, no cause for alarm. That's according to the federal government. I was shot in head. Ex-UI Deputy VC Agbaje tells abduction story. There was an abduction that happened on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and he was one of those who was abducted. It's good to know he's out, ill and hearty. So, but you might want to read the story on page 14 of the paper. Rising wheat. Corn prices may worsen food crisis in Nigeria. So we've been hearing these alarm bells for quite a while now. When are we going to hear from the Minister of Agriculture on what the plan is to avert whatever crisis could be coming? The story is on page. Don't forget that the president sacked. It was only time he sacked a minister. The Minister of Agriculture and I think the Minister of Power. Yeah. So
it's telling.
Yes, I think that the Minister of Agriculture might need to, take a look at these headlines. Who knows? I'm not predicting anything. I'm just saying that we need to hear from the Minister of Agriculture. That's all I'm saying. Let's leave it there for leadership.
Well, especially coming at a time when we just recently launched the special agro-industrial processing zones that's supposed to take off in 7 states. Let's see how quickly we can get ahead of that. To avert the food crisis has been warned there on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Look at this Nigeria today, and it's talking about that travel advisory that's already been making the rounds. You got it wrong. It's a quote. Find out who said that. Nigeria's defense chiefs puncture foreign embassies' claim of likely implosion occasioned by threatening insecurity. That's the lead of the paper. And Chamberlain, your picture is right there as well. You call it V5, Voltron 5, or I don't know. But hey, that's what you have on the front. Oh, okay, there's a caption to the story. Makinde hosts weekly G5 governors in Ibadan. That's the way it is on the front page. And right under that one, 2023 election, Northern Elders warn Nigerians on presidential candidates. Exactly what does that mean? Find the details on the inside pages. And right beside the name page, lastly, two other ones. 37,382 out of 60,370 new PVCs still uncollected in Lagos, says INEC. That's more than 50% of the new cards are yet to be collected. Yet some people went to the collection centers yesterday, to the best of my knowledge, and they were turned back, say, come back in December. And we have 60,000, 37,000 plus almost 38,000 uncollected. Well, the story is on page 12, and this Nigeria, right beside the nameplate, Naira free fall continues, exchanges at 800 Naira per dollar. The details on the inside pages. That's this Nigeria today.
Well, take a look at Daily Trust next. Naira redesign. Dollar scarcity hits BDCs, sells at, look at that, 818 Naira to the dollar. Just wow. Naira depreciated by 53 Naira in 5 days at parallel market. Nigerians rush to dispose of local currency. It's failing as a store of value, experts. I mean, when that happens, you know that that can only be very, very dire, I tell you. All right, look, I'll just let you go ahead and take a look at the story and read it.
What you will, right?
Yeah, because it's sometimes difficult to actually find the adjective to qualify some of this, especially when these scenarios are just kind of fluid, because if they say 818 now, you know how it is. You could get out there and it's a little higher. So you just never can tell. And then they also highlight this Brazil story, from prison to presidency. Brazil's Lula rises from ashes. So
the real phoenix, huh?
Oh yeah, so he was bullish too when he was giving his comments after that fixture. But look at the sea of heads right there. Oh dear, that's Daily Trust.
Well, The Guardian also follows suit in terms of what their headline looks like. Dollar scarcity worsens as banks ration withdrawals, BDCs stretched. That's what they say on the front page of The Guardian this morning. We can't give what we don't have, banks tell customers.
Oh my goodness.
I have to laugh because I'm just trying to, I'm feeling sorry for the cashiers now, you know, dealing with irate customers saying, but my money is in the bank. When you were collecting it, you didn't know, you know, you have a lot of back and forth, but this is what they have here. We can't give what we don't have, banks tell customers.
Whoa. Hope it's not their dumb accounts that they have this dollars.
Exactly, it's dumb. See, for domiciliary account operators, well, look, don't let me tell you too much. You have to read the story. It's a paper review, yeah?
What?
High cash holders mop up black market, push Naira to highway. BDC leaders at Eco Hotel trade over 2 billion Naira on Friday.
What?
Yeah, you heard
single
right.
Day?
Yes, 2 billion Naira. Finance Ministry boils over Cold War between CBN Minister. Uba, is this? Okay, I don't know who. Is it? This is certainly a name, not the name of the bank. Okay. I see there. You have to be sure what it is. I want to believe this is Uba. Alternative fiscal monetary coordinating structure required. CBN Act needs to specify working relationship between two offices. So that story is on page 6. I'm sure this is in relation to the Cold War, which is said to be brewing between the CBN and the Ministry of Finance. But hey, the president already spoke up, so one would think that already puts paid to it. But there are fiscal consequences, and as such, they have to see how it is that they can manage the fiscal consequences.
But they need to be on the same page.
They do need to be on the same page.
In
You
the
have all
interest
of the
of the
details
economy.
on page 6 of the paper. You also see the story which you've seen before. Federal government dismisses U.S. insecurity alert in Abuja, says alarm, needless hype. This obituary was announced yesterday, a really sad one to see. Anglican Archbishop of Lagos Province, Olumakaye, dies at 53. Wow. May his soul rest in peace. They have a number of other stories right there on the front, on the top, just beneath the nameplate for you. At the bottom, save Nigeria from global scandal, probe oil theft. Ex-diplomats tell Buhari The story is on page 6. We'll leave it there for the Guardian newspapers.
Nigerian News Direct this morning has as its lead 2023 presidency. No use of federal might. Buhari vows. That's it right there on the front page. Says Nigerians would be allowed to make the choice. INEC boss backs president, stands by delivering resulting electronically. Deliver the nation during 2023 general election. Subscribed to the president, says electoral amendment bill signed to create avenue for Nigerians to make choice. We will provide needed intelligence to make election work. And there's one other one. I foresee a very peaceful election in 2023, says Uzodimma. All of that you'll find on page 2 of the paper today. About the nameplate, one of the stories that will take your fancy. Nigeria's energy transition plans requires $1.9 trillion till 2060. That's some more than 35 years from now. But hey, the details you'll find on the inside pages. And down the page, guys, this is interesting. God is kind to Ekiti for making Oyebanji governor. Says who? Fayose. The governor is APC, Fayose is PDP, so where is that coming from? Hey, Marco, as you said, this is a paper review, not an analysis. The details are there for you to pick. That's the Nigerian News Direct today.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, interesting times.
Yeah, that's what we tell people.
Interesting
Just think
times.
before you do some of these fights.
You know, well, I hope the citizens are getting wiser. New Telegraph is the next one I'm looking at for you here. Miyetti Allah, state-sponsored vigilantes, hordes, fueling Nigeria's insecurity. That's what Miyetti Allah is saying. This is Miyetti Allah counter Hore. So there are two different mark bands, so to speak. One is a more specific faction. Pages 2 and 7 will give you details. US-UK advisory false or necessary. Federal government says citizens not in danger. Situation under control. Freed ex-UI DVC. My abductors shot me in the head, but the story is on pages 2 and 7 for you. You also have this at the bottom, BV. Okay, no, this is Beavers. Beavers. It looks like BVAS. It's Beavers. Incident form phased out of Nigeria's electoral system. That's according to INEC. 2023, Buhari applauds commission, charges police to ensure peaceful polls. Umahi bans campaign in schools. So that is also there for you. I hope they won't ban voting there, because INEC usually relies on the space that school compounds provide for them to be able to accommodate voters and conduct the process. CBN, credit to private sector rose to 40.5 trillion naira in September, sells $9.67 billion FX to dealers in the first half of 2022. I want to see the story on page 3. The president is out of town. He's in London. Buhari leaves for London for medical checkup. OPEC, global oil demand to rise to 100 million barrels per day. Pages 2 and 8 will give you details. And just in case you're wondering what Twitter will now have in stock for you, especially now that there is a new sheriff in town. Elon Musk has finally concluded his deal. He's now the owner of Twitter. Here he goes. Twitter to charge $20 for verification badge. So, you know, if you have that blue tick right beside your name, it might soon cost you $20 a month. You have to ask yourself, is it really worth? Is it bringing in money? Anyways, I don't know. Pages 8 and 31 might give you details. Medical practice collapse imminent in Nigeria. That's from Unimed VC.
That is sad.
The Japa syndrome, I think, has really hit the medical sector.
Yeah.
But let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Okay, that ends a look at some of the dailies here this morning. But yeah, we did also tell you that we're going to get a response from Courtney. So we have received communication from Courtney. This was dated 31st October, and we just received it as we highlighted. And it says, it's captioned, "A threat by the union to picket the airport from 1st November 2022." And this is addressed to all members of staff of BASL. And it says, it's quite lengthy. Let me see how much of it we can take. It says, "Dear valued members of staff, management has just received a letter from Airport Transport Services Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, ATSAN, calling its members working at Murtala Mohammed Airport Terminal 2, MMA2, not to work from 1st November 2022. The reason given is that the appointments of certain members of staff were terminated. We wish to state categorically that we have complied with all laws on the disengagement of staff, the insistence of the unions that we should operate the new conditions of service, which was signed in June 2021, and by the agreement, the severance pay will be operational at least 5 years from the date of the signing, as that will be the date for first payment." And it says it will be due. Okay, hold on, I think I missed it. Okay, yeah, it says from the date of the signing, and that will be the date the first payment will be due. It's unlawful and illegal, as there is no provision in the agreements that the agreement shall operate retrospectively. We appreciate that under the law, unions can or cannot insist rather on going on strike for unlawful causes. We appeal to all members of staff that they should do their jobs normally as provided by their contracts of employment. We also state that participating in the strike that is for an unlawful purpose is against the laws of Nigeria and exposes every participant to a charge of disturbing or interfering with the lawful business of the company. We must reiterate that throughout the negotiations, which have gone on for a while, the unions insisted on following the letters of the agreement. We are thus surprised that they are now seeking to refine some of the contents of an agreement fully signed. This is a notice signed by Oluwatosin Onalaja, the head corporate communications of Courtney. So that is the latest communication we received from Courtney concerning the activities, the picketing or the protest stations going on in MMA2 Lagos, which has the potential of disrupting several other flights. Already, Ibom Air has issued a statement that their services are affected, and so you may need to place a call or two to your agent if you have any flight in or outbound Lagos expecting any such connections. So we'll get you more details on this developing matter as we get them. But we will be back in just a moment. Stay with us.
I have come here to pledge on behalf of the PDP that if you vote for us, we will restore peace in Kaduna State. the security challenges will be addressed. 3, we promise that we will reactivate the industries in Kaduna State. In collaboration with the private sector and the Kaduna State, we will reestablish those factories. 4, we promise you the roads linking Kaduna and Kano, linking Kaduna and Jos through Pambegua, linking Kaduna and Abuja will be completed by the grace of God.
Let me say one thing. Help is here. Hope is here. Assurance is here. Promise is here. Prosperity is here. Health is here. Security is here. Banditry has ended.
The government we intend to form, I and that team, with our team, we do things differently. We want to bring a transformative government, purposeful government that will start dealing with the issues. And those issues are known and very clear. The issue of security, which will be decisive. The issues of unity, which will be decisive. The issues of our economy, because it is critical. If you go today, out of the 10 poorest states in Nigeria, 10 is in the north. Out of school children, it is in the north that you have the highest out of school children in the global earth. I'm telling you, all this is what the elites used to confuse us, to keep us where we are. Next year, the election must be based on character we can trust. What we are selling now is listening to all of us. All of us are going to have a well-written manifesto, a well-written document we'll read out, a well-written this. But what we are selling now is, who among us will you trust?
Welcome back. The beat goes on for politicians, but NECA insists on playing a tune for that particular musical. And so we've got, as you've seen there, Adewale Oyerinde, who is the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
A quite interesting scenario at this point in time, because we've got quite some time before Nigerians go out there to cast their ballots. Absolutely. So they could make up their mind, they could see different things, different scenarios play out. So much as they're talking about what they want to do, how or why they think Nigerians should vote for them, but you, NECA, even the OPS, also looking through their document, you've seen a thing or two about the economy, some of which, from what we understand, not exactly, you're not exactly phased or happy entirely with what you've seen. Tell us about it.
Thank you for having me once again. I think from our perspective, not focusing on the politics of it, but strictly on the economy of it, and how it affects organized businesses as a whole. I think for us, there are key fundamental issues. We feel we can't be complaining about the effects while we are feeding the costs. So let's look at the fundamental issues that drive the economy and has brought us significantly to where we are currently. We've mentioned the issue of the oil theft, we've mentioned the issue of the refineries, that has ballooned the issue of subsidy to over 6 trillion. A government has proposed that it's going to stop subsidy by June next year. How that is going to happen, we haven't been told. There's no definitive roadmap in dealing with that. There are also issues concerning the business environment, as it were. You know, the regulatory incursions into businesses, the legislative issues, excuse me, the legislative issues that we have also, and then the whole big issue of forex and energy cost. So for us, those are the conversations that we want to have, not the generic, I will do this, I will do that, but what are the roadmaps, definitive roadmaps that the business community can hold the candidates to, that Nigerians can hold the candidates to. That you say you will do this, and you haven't done it. No, enough of rhetorics, enough of the same story that we have had, but we want a definitive roadmap on how exactly we are going to deal with those issues. I will rephrase, I will reiterate what I said earlier. You know, we can't be complaining about the cause, or we can't be complaining about the effects, and then we keep feeding the cause.
So I'm wondering, I mean, for you at NECA, what is high on your priority list? If you were to be looking at any of the candidates, what would any of them say that you would say, this is the person we think really has the plan?
One of the things they say, our focus is the economy, basically. You know, you fix the economy, you will have fixed many of the problems that we're having.
Yeah, and the economy, there are many aspects to the economy. You've just pointed at subsidy, if you talk about electricity, the aspect of the regulatory environment, etc. But for you, on the priority list, because there are a lot of things, and you can only do perhaps one at a time.
Absolutely.
Or if you're going to focus on a number of them, but prioritizing one of them, which one would you say is the most important to you?
I think you fix, let me give you 3 priorities, and they rate on the same level. Let's fix power, and then let's fix the issue of forex, and then let's fix the issue of insecurity. Because those 3, they are at the heart of industrialization. Without power, you cannot industrialize, and majority of our businesses, they run on power. They need power to run. And if you look at the trend within the context of diesel in the last 1 year, many businesses budgeted 250, 300 for diesel per liter in January, and as today is running to over 700. It disrupts business plan. Then let's look at the issue of insecurity. There's massive industrialization in the north, which has made many businesses to close down in the north, and it's trickling down gradually to the south. And then the third one is the issue of forex, as I mentioned. Many businesses need forex. They need inputs, especially those inputs that you have to import. Without forex, you cannot produce, your capacity utilization will be less, you cannot expand, you cannot employ. So it has far-reaching consequences for organized business. So those 3 components, let's fix power, let's fix insecurity, and then let's fix the issue of forex.
Let's take the issue of power. What have the engagement with the power sector been like for your organization? Because we know that a significant part of the power sector has been privatized. There have been, you know, let's say, goals, you know, earmarked for meeting, and they have not been able to meet this goal, so to speak, with regards to generation, with regards to distribution. Transmission is the only part still in the hands of government. So what exactly has the engagement been like for your organization with the power minister or the power sector in general?
Well, we have of the DISCOs, we call them DISCOs, distribution companies, as also members of NECA, and I can tell you engagement is ongoing, has continued for a long time, and we can't close our eyes to the challenges that the DISCOs also are facing. They have issues with energy theft, they have issues with their own internal structures, they have issues also with government owing them billions and billions of naira. So we can't deal with the DISCO as one entity. You know, we have to look at the whole value chain of the power sector. You mentioned the generating companies. You know, the DISCOs, we say the GENCOs are not generating enough for them to distribute. The GENCOs, we say the distribution lines of the DISCOs is not sufficient enough to take what they have generated. So we have to look at the whole value chain of the power sector before we start identifying what are the critical issues that we need to solve now. What are the critical issues within that value chain that we need to solve in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months, in 1 year? That we have not done really.
It's interesting that, you know, members of the discos, I mean, the owners of the disco or the discos are members of your own organization as well. So I want to imagine that they also understand the pains that you go through, and that they would have an engagement to see how they could be creative in terms of, you know, solving some of the problems that you face. I mean, we've heard of, you know, providing electricity in clusters, etc.
Absolutely.
But while you can speak to that, what I really want you to talk about is this issue of subsidy. You've talked about how subsidy is now ballooning into the trillions of naira. We have it in the budget. We know as a people and as a country that that is unsustainable.
It is.
However, we've seen the effect of what deregulating a sector can do to it. With the instance with diesel, how, you know, diesel was selling for roughly 250, and before the end of the year, it's already almost at 800 naira per litre. Do you think it's something that we can afford to do with petrol?
Now, why did we arrive at subsidy of $1 trillion in the first place? Let's leave the 6 trillion out of it. Why did we arrive at subsidy of 500 billion in the first place? Basically, the foundation is you are not refining, and because you are not refining, you are importing. So what ordinarily should have been a blessing is now becoming a curse, because the higher the value of crude in the international market, the higher the amount you spend on importing. So the first point for us is to go back to the reasons why the 4 refineries are not working. We've had turnaround maintenances over time. 4 refineries in a country as big as ours, probably the only country in OPEC that is not refining sufficiently. There are fundamental issues that even critical stakeholders are shying away from. Why 4 refineries not working? It is unacceptable. If you deal with the issue of 4 refineries, it brings down the quantity and the quantum of fuel that will be importing. And let's look at the other issue, the controversy concerning the subsidy itself. We have high-ranking officials, even in government, that have come to question the quantity of petrol that another agency of government say we are consuming on a daily basis. So those are issues that we need to deal with, and we need to deal with decisively. Whoever is coming in as the next government have to deal with it frontally, have to have the political will to address those issues, because those are the issues at the heart of the problems.
Are you saying then, are you suggesting that we keep the subsidies of petrol, but look for how to bring down the cost of the subsidies? Is that what you're saying?
Our position is to remove subsidy. Remove subsidy while you deal with the issue of the 4 refineries. Let's deal with it. If you make the 4 refineries functional, then we will have no business importing. And that will crash the issue of subsidy totally. And come to think of it also, the controversy around the scam, some have called it a scam, some have called it organized crime, the subsidy regime. So when key officials in the OPS and key officials of government are also saying that, then it calls for a deep reflection, some have called it an inquiry, you know, put up a judicial inquiry to deal with those issues. A few years ago, I think the government then came up with a body to look at the issue of subsidy. I think one of the bank chiefs was the leader of that committee. And they came up with far-reaching recommendations. We don't know what happened with those recommendations. So we believe strongly that we should do it with subsidy. It is unsustainable. It is a drain in Nigeria's revenue. It is very few people are benefiting from it, not the whole of Nigerians. But before you deal with the issue of subsidy, let's address the low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit is fixing the 4 refineries. We can't do it.
If you could just take a look at some of the highlights of their manifestos, for instance, that of the APC candidate, the economy, some of what he talks about, he talks about tax reform. He wants to review corporate tax system, deploy technology and effective policies to better rationalize the system. He wants to review the federal budgetary methodology, build economy that will produce more for everybody, both for agriculture and manufactured goods, improve existing industries. And then he talks about just an allocation of revenue between the federal and state governments. Do any of this, how did they come across to you?
Beautiful manifesto. But let me speak to the tax reforms. Because currently we say, and rightly so, you know, organized businesses pay up to over 50 taxes, levies, and fees across the three tiers of government. both legal and illegal. And hardly will you find a business that can survive paying over 50 different taxes. So it will be interesting to see the details of the operationalization of that item in the manifesto, because we believe rather than overtax, rather than burden businesses with more taxes, I think expanding the tax net will be a sustainable option.
I think I've heard him say that they should bring in more people to the tax net.
Absolutely, supported. But the current tax regime, is burdensome to organized businesses, and it has the potential to also stop investors from coming to this country. And we need investors, as it were.
And this is in spite of the fact that we hear a lot of talk around, because you speak with state governors, they acknowledge that this is a problem. A number of state governors say, you know, what we've done is we've been able to harmonize our tax regime in such a way that you only have one office for tax businesses, and that, you know, it is that office that collects for both the state and the local government and remits afterwards to, you know, what is the local government and what is the state government. Your members have not reported any such states which have been successful in that regard?
You know, some call it official statements and the reality on the ground. And we've had to engage one or two governors also, and also show them evidences that, look, these are the taxes that businesses pay, and these are receipted levies that our members are also forced to pay. And those levies, those receipts, they seem strange to those government officials. How is this happening within the context of the environment? So the reality on ground is businesses are paying far much more than they should ordinarily pay within the context of what they face.
Okay, if I could jump to, pardon me, that of the PDP. Well, he said that they've got three basic principles. First is to reaffirm the importance of the private sector leadership and greater private sector participation in development, break the federal government's monopoly for all infrastructure, the sectors, including refineries, rail transportation, and power transmission. And then he wants to allow the market, you know, to have the market just to play a huge role in terms of deregulating the prices. Well, I think these are some of the highlights of his own manifesto. So interestingly, I see a mention in the private sector here. Does that enthuse you?
Yes, it's interesting, really, and while we welcome that, you know, there's been a confusion, really, that we must clear. You know, sometimes when they call the private sector, then you wonder, what exactly are they referring to as private sector? You know, there's an institution that is called the private sector, and this consists of MAN, that's Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, consists of NECA, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, consists of NASIMA, we have NASME, and we have NASI. Those 5 organizations, these are the rules we can play, and we can flag all those success stories, that this is what we have done, the OPS have done in these states, and these are the effects for those states. We are still open for engagement, and those engagement, as I said, will continue even to the future. I'm
looking at the fact that, you know, I mean, Ayo highlighted the fact that you are an employers consultative association.
Yep.
Excuse me. And one of the areas where we know that, you know, we seem to be facing some danger right now is with this immigration, this Japa syndrome. How is it affecting your association, and what are employers saying?
Well, depending on the perspective from which you are looking at it, you know, someone will say we are exporting talents. You know, somebody will look at it from the perspective of returns, that the talents you have exported, they will send returns back to the country within the context of Forex. But for the business context, you know, businesses need talents to survive. Notwithstanding the automation that is coming up, the role of ICT now, but businesses need talent to survive. So for any business that says it doesn't need talents, or the current Japa syndrome is not a cause of worry, it's probably lying. So it affects businesses significantly. And that has also made employers to be a bit creative and put more focus within the context of talent development. So you have many businesses now having structures that have to do with that runs their talent pipelines, so that you have a group of employees that you have trained, that you are bringing up, deliberately now, so that when some leave, people will always leave. Mobility of labor is global, is legal, is allowable. So when people leave, you have a pipeline of others, competent, that can fill in those gaps. And it's not peculiar to Nigeria. Indian is also a big exporter of talent and is working for them now. If you check the top 50 companies in the world, probably Indians are running 3/4 of those companies. It has its positives, but within the context of development, sometimes you worry about it, especially when you are in a developing stage. You need all the talents that you can get, all the talents that you can muster for them to run. The flip side of it, positive side, is as things continue to improve within the context of this environment, it is also possible that those that have left, they'll probably come back. They have learned new technologies. They have
That's
learned,
a probability.
Yes, probably, yes.
We can't bank on that, can we?
Yeah, we can back on that. But it's a probability that you can tie some level of hope on that is possible once things start to improve in this environment. That they probably come back. Let's ask ourselves, Chris, why will I leave Nigeria to go and work in Europe? Two major reasons. One will be probably economic reasons and probably security reasons. So if you deal with the economic reasons in this environment, that I have jobs I can do, I have well-paying jobs, decent jobs that I can do, and the environment is safe, is secure, then the propensity for me to want to leave is less, because I have every other thing that makes me to want to leave. I have them probably around here.
Because, I mean, looking at the entire thing, I was just going to ask you, shouldn't we have a strategy as opposed to hoping that these things will happen? Because many of the state governors and governments appear as surprised, as disappointed as regular people, whereas they should be the ones formulating the policies to ensure that these things don't happen. So for what you see, how far away or close do you think we are to stemming this tide?
Well, I must tell you we're a bit far. I will, the statement I started with, I will reiterate it the third time. We can't continue to complain about the effect and feeding the cause. We keep feeding the causes why we are at this point. Even up to today, some state governors are not paying the 30,000 minimum wage. Some state governments are not creative enough to come up with new alternative source of generating income. Everybody's going to Abuja at the end of the month. It is not sustainable. It creates a system, it creates a rent-seeking culture where we start dishing out benefits, we start dishing out, it's worrisome, because we all travel out of the country once in a while, we see how things are run, then why we come back and we can't implement those basic things, it's still worrisome. And those things are not rocket science, basically. They are things that a focused, determined person in government can do.
Let's wind down from where we started, about the economy.
Yeah.
The essence, the importance of those who are seeking to lead this country for the next 4 years, and perhaps at every level, not just the #1 seat, to ensure that they get it right with the economy. Yeah. Now, for those who will be voting, even some of your members, if I could add that, they are usually accused of not even coming out to vote in the first place. And so after talking all the talk, they don't walk the talk. Yeah. So do you think that we should be optimistic that this time we will have this message resonate with those who are going out there to get their voices heard or make their votes count?
We can only hope, Chris. The level of awareness now, the level of awareness of the rot, permit me to use the word, the rot in which we find ourselves, that the level of awareness, the understanding of the risk that we face, I think is wider now. So that should ordinarily stir an average Nigerian to want to do the needful and make sure that he casts his vote when the time comes. I said we can only hope that Nigerians have learned enough to know or to see that enough is actually enough. Yeah.
Are you worried about the level of engagement that you're getting? I don't know whether your association is partnering or it has invited the candidates to engage with it, on roundtable discussions to scrutinize what their plans are. I mean, to also have feelers from your people on what it is. Are you worried about the level of engagement, or you're enthusiastic about it?
For the OPS, the organized private sector as it were, and the institution, and what we have done is not to join the bandwagon of inviting them to a public gathering, as some have done, because we've realized it's all about rhetorics. It's all about playing to the gallery. And we are working on a more strategic engagement, a more strategic private engagement on, these are the concerns of the organized businesses. How exactly are you going to deal with this? Now, the response we want to believe will be positive, has been positive.
All right.
And we also want to believe that progressively the message we keep sinking. As someone mentioned the last time, I think the former CBN governor mentioned that whoever is coming in now, if he doesn't have a definitive roadmap, because we know the problems, there's going to be huge problems, huge challenges. If he doesn't have a definitive roadmap, then he should probably not be voted in.
Fine place to let it go. Mr. Adewale Oyerinde is the Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. Thank you for coming on today.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Sunrise Daily, but there are some updates concerning the protest for aviation workers in Lagos, the ATSAN members. So they are protesting, and we understand that they occupy the gates of the airport since 2 a.m. At the moment, the commandant has called them to a meeting. Our aviation correspondent updates us with that, this particular information. So remember, we did bring you this story when we started as early, just before 7 a.m., that the workers by Courtney say they are protesting the sacking of about 37 of their workers. They say certain processes, they were not just happy with it, but we also did bring you the response by Courtney, who did say that they followed the processes that were stipulated and that they had been in negotiation, and that they are equally surprised to see the workers protest. And this, by Courtney says, is tantamount to disrupting and violating other people's rights. And as a result of this protest, Ibom Air has issued a statement saying the activities have been impacted by this strike. So who knows what else. So we're hoping to see if we could get some response from several other authorities there. For instance, the Ministry of Aviation, the NCAA, the civil authorities. They all need to just wade in on this one. We're also hoping that the meeting that the protesters have been called into, their leaders reckon by the commandant there, would yield some results, because already the 7 a.m. flights have already been affected by this. So we need to manage the situation and see how much more improvements or at least some sort of solution that can be addressed or reached with those meetings.
Oh, we'll wait to see what the engagement will be like, and what eventually they yield. It's unclear what time this particular protest video was shot. This amateur video sent in by those who were at the scene of the protest. We certainly will keep you updated as to what precisely is happening in the aviation sector as we get it, especially with regards to by Courtney and the MM2 situation, a very busy airport, one of the key airports out of Lagos, and we know that that has already affected a number of plans, as you highlighted, Chamberlain. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, just how the airlines are able to adjust, and even by Courtney itself, how it's able to resume operations as the engagement also keep on going.
Absolutely. So we'll get you more information on that matter as we get them. Ayo, back to you.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Well, it's one of the issues that will most certainly determine who becomes president or who becomes governor in any of the states in the country in the months ahead. But let's continue our conversation that we started earlier with Dr. Monday Michaels Oshibagu, who is CEO Billbox and former spokesman of the Nigeria Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Ayo.
The elections are not far away, and everyone is already saying what they can do or what they cannot do and all. Earlier in our conversation, we heard the Director General of the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, saying OPS members pay something in the region of 50 plus taxes to get their businesses running across the various tiers of government, federal, state, and local, and all of that. So one is wondering, in your opinion, how these conversations will flow into engagement of those vying for office.
Well, he's accurate with what he said about the multiple taxations and levies that we encounter as businesses in Nigeria. But the fact is, who is going to walk the talk? That's our concern. You know, for the first time, all political candidates tend to agree that the economy is a fundamental problem. How to fix it? We've been looking at the offers being made by some candidates, but we are more concerned in seeing something that will become more in practice than just the paperwork. We have very novel paperwork that have been on the shelf for years. Issues that concern the organized private sector stem from implementation and the sincerity of that implementation. We've had some form of implementations in the past that come in parts, and when they do, you know, they are truncated by one political activity or the lack of will by the system, you know, to see it to the end. We've had that experience in power reforms. We've had that experience in energy reforms in terms of oil and gas reforms. So the issue is, who is going to walk the talk?
When you say walk the talk, exactly what are you talking about?
You know, you must have the will and competence to have people in place to carry out that process. It may be a very difficult task. 2023 is going to be a very challenging one. And the fact that we are going to be challenged by some natural factors emerging from the flood, we're also going to look at how the market has responded to our forex operations. You're going to look at also what we have on the ground in terms of power capacity. So whoever is going to take that task has a lot of work to do.
Let's be clear, Dr. Oshibagu. So you're saying that the year ahead is a lot more than just the elections.
Yes, it's a lot more.
But the elections is going to determine how we tackle the issues.
Definitely.
What are these issues? How significant are they in the scheme of things?
Okay, you know, we've been dealing with insecurity from the aspect of terrorism and banditry issues, kidnapping. Yeah. This time around, we'll be dealing with food security. And I do not know the capacity of our grains reserve right now. I do not have an accurate record of what we will have as backup. So the system may be inclined to do some form of importation, whether we like it or not, to actually bridge the gap by the impact of the flooding. And this has already affected livestock. The International Agency for Agricultural Development has already indicated that a lot of projects that they have in place in Nigeria have been impacted by this flood. You are quite aware that people have been displaced. Returning to their homes will take about 6 to 8 months of rehabilitation. That experience we had in 2012. This time around is a lot more because it happened at a period where a lot of people were producing. So those who are particularly in grains business, in fibers and tubers have been impacted. These are main staple foods for Nigerians. You are quite aware now that the costs for consumables have gone up in the past days. And it's going to continue like this. So whoever is coming in will have to create a balance between the capacity to import to support and also the capacity to also impute funds and as well as resources to that market to sustain it. That aside, you're looking at our power sector challenges, You're going to also look at our energy sector challenges. Now, I'm sure a lot of people underestimated how long the Ukrainian-Russian conflict would last. Russia right now is actually threatening food supplies around the world because of its response to the attack on Crimea. And so they may actually generate some form of food scarcity in terms of grains. And the world knows quite well that Ukraine is a reliable source for grains. So that's another challenge. So we're looking at some factors we can't control and the factors that we can control. But the issue is who is willing to take that walk, to take very difficult decisions, because you can't be upping up taxes for where there's no income.
Well, some of them have said that they look forward to increasing the tax base, not just from the people that are within the tax net now, but expanding it across board. But you've been spokesman for NASME. A sizable number of people who feel that members of the informal sector, so to speak, we need to find a way to bring them into the tax net themselves, perhaps because they are not there. Is that something that you think is significant, or you think it's just a hoax?
It's not. It's important that you bring people into the tax net. That has always been our prayer, expand it. But you can only do that with people who earn income. You don't tax people who don't earn. There has been a reduction in the number.
Sorry, that's not to say that small and medium enterprises don't earn tax.
They do
revenue.
They do. But you see, some years back we had about 44 million within the formal sector by the MBS report. It's declined now to about 39 million. What does that tell you? Some guys are out of business. And we don't know how many will be out of business by next year. And that's going to be a major challenge for whoever is coming in.
And what factors are responsible for this?
Well, there are several factors.
There are those who
most small businesses die within the first 5 years.
There are those who also, you say that all the time, but there are those who will also say, perhaps it's because many people who get into businesses in the first place don't know enough about business to run business. So they just run business more for sustenance than for sustainability.
Well, there are different entrances to the market. That's what I would say. You have too many gates to the market. Some persons are there to become entrepreneurs from the ideas that they've generated over the years. Some are there just simply because they need to survive. Some people also need it as a side business just in case what they do not survive. So there are different factors to why many people go into the market. But the most important thing is the sustainability of that market. Is it sustainable? There are a lot of people who come in and make the market quite sustainable. Our concerns should be on having a sustainable market that will give sustainable income. And if you have that, then you can expand your tax basket.
Well, I mean, you've said, asked this question repeatedly, who will build a cart? But let's see if our next guest has some answers for you. Dr. Muda Yusuf is Chief Executive Officer of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. He is a former DG of Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, LCCI. He joins us virtually. Thanks for joining us this morning, Doc. So you've been speaking a lot about some of the things, decisions, policies that government at the federal level is putting out now. But then there are promises that are being made by incumbents, those who are aspiring to take over from the administration currently at the center. What for you, I mean, you probably have listened to Dr. Ashibogu as well a little. What for you are the challenges up against the next person who will take the seat as president of Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. First, we need to get a very good understanding, of how these political parties or candidates will address the key issues. Because whoever is going to tackle a problem must demonstrate proper understanding of the problems. So far, I'm not seeing much of that. Most of the pronouncements are very general in nature, which anybody can make. Most of the pronouncements are not very rich in content. Most of them are also not deep enough, to convince anyone that, yes, these, players have a very clear understanding of what the problems are. Many of them, they just talk about the problem the way any layman will talk about the problem. And you know what it is when you go to political rallies, it's even worse. But that's just like a carnival, you just dance, talk, people dance around and say some few things, and they disperse. So that deep understanding, I think, the candidates need to come across better. So having said that, there are quite a number of areas which I think the incoming actors will have to deal with, and they should have clarity on how to deal with them. The first is the fiscal challenge. That's the challenging of funding the country itself. I mean, you only need to look at the current budget. I mean, it tells the whole story of how bad the financial situation is with government. We are talking about a deficit of over 10 trillion. We are talking about a debt service of over 6 trillion. We are talking about a deficit, a subsidy budget of almost another 6 trillion. And in all of this, we are talking of a revenue of just about 9.4 or 9.7 trillion. And of course, you can't get all the revenue. So you have to discount that revenue maybe by 30%. So at the end of the day, you are confronted with a budget that, if by the time you service debt, you have nothing left. So how exactly are they going to fix this challenge? So the fiscal challenge of ensuring fiscal sustainability, fiscal consolidation, is something that we need to have very clear ideas about, because quite a number of them are making promises here and there. We will do this, we will do that. Nobody is telling us exactly how they will fund it.
Perhaps to quickly, Dr. Yusuf, just 1 second. On this fiscal, challenge that you're talking about, there have been a lot of talk around fiscal discipline itself, blocking loopholes and being more spendthrift and all of that. How do you see that playing out? Do you see any government having what it takes to plug whatever the loopholes may be within record time in order to address some of the issues you're raising?
Well, some of these things are easier said than done. And the challenge of the fiscal environment is even beyond, plugging of leakages. I imagine that there has to be some fundamental changes in the structure of governance, for instance. I imagine that there has to be some fundamental changes in some of the, the legislations, the investment environment, to increase the quantum of investment. I imagine that there has to be some fundamental reforms around some critical sectors, for instance, the oil and gas. Of course, there are some, efforts that are ongoing, but there's a lot more that needs to be done in some of those areas. So it goes beyond plugging leakages. Of course, that is easier said than done. But we need to see some pathways as to how we want to undertake some very important reforms to grow investment, to improve the macroeconomic environment, and to also even improve the revenue, and even to reform the budget itself. Because even within this framework of the budget, there are all sorts of things really that should not be there. There are all sorts of lopsided priorities. So all of these things are very critical, very important. It's because with that money, there's very little you can do.
Okay. Well,
so if you are inheriting a situation where the debt together now, by the time you add the CBN debt, all of them, it's going to 70 trillion. So how do you want to deliver on key promises?
Well, Dr.
So the fiscal challenge.
Yes. Go ahead. Yes. Finish on that.
The fiscal challenge is number one. How are you going to fix it without plunging us into additional debt?
But you know, one of the areas.
Heavily indebted now.
Yes, there are those who have, and gentlemen, you both speak to this. There are those who point to how private businesses run and think maybe if we borrow a template or two from the private sector and attempt to apply to public sector, perhaps it will go somewhere. For instance, there's hardly any blue chip you will get into that you won't see a vision statement, a mission statement, a core value, and all of that. There are those who have questioned whether or not there is a particular path, a direction towards which Nigeria as an institution, if we can use the term, is going on its own. What's a national ethos to which everyone who comes into office, federal, state, or local, must go towards? Do you see that as a significant challenge?
Well, it is a challenge. It's a challenge because you are dealing with, you know, the bureaucracy has a major role to play in the implementation of government policies. You're undertaking reforms, if you want, whatever you want to do, you need the right kind of bureaucracy. And you have a bureaucracy that have been used to a particular way of doing things over the years. Reforming the bureaucracy itself is a major challenge. Because, I mean, for those who have been in the private sector and now find themselves in government, they see that there's a difference. The speed with which you can move as a CEO in a private sector is not the same thing with when you're in government. It's even worse because you have the National Assembly, Parliament, all these people to deal with. And all of them have all sorts of funny interests. You know? So there's a whole lot of challenge that sometimes we just take for granted. That yes, this is the way it is done in the private sector. You get to government, that is the way it happens. It's not exactly like that. Those who have been in private sector and now in government will tell you their experience. So we should not underestimate those institutional issues.
Most certainly.
That
we'll come back to you.
Confront.
Yes. Dr. Shibogu, vision, mission, core values as a nation, do you see it as something that those vying for office should consider in order to do things differently for national development?
As a country, we have such.
Oh, really?
They are valuable. You have what guides this country. Your constitution is very explicit on certain issues. There are visions, there are missions to every government. But the issue is, do we keep to those templates?
I don't know the vision.
Fine.
Maybe you can, perhaps there are those who are wondering exactly what is this vision?
Well, you know, the country has one fundamental direction, one, to keep people as a united entity and ensure that there's equity, fairness, and it speaks to making sure that every part of the country is a beneficiary of its national assets.
So how does that taper into development is the question.
Well, it's relative in context of how we run that. You see, you said something about taking out some form of private practice into public practice. No. The truth is, private practice is expected to learn from public practice in terms of discipline, in terms of policy. That's where government is supposed to be known for and strong at. Because if you look at any country that grows and is very effective, the secret is from their civil service system. They make good policies, adequate policies that protect their private sector.
Does that happen
now, in this place, we have systems that are in competition with private sector. Right, because we work in silos, we work in clusters, and everyone is interested for their own selfish reasons. So it's not a collective interest in most cases when you come. That's why I said when you come to practice, it is the rules are there. We have a very robust civil service policy. It's been reformed over the years.
When it comes to being reformed now.
Yes, but there's no perfect policy anywhere in the world. But people look at the loopholes and take advantage of it. So we are more interested in the system deficits than in things that will make things work well. And why are we saying so? You see, private sector is supposed to drive a system in terms of economy, in terms of development, and the public sector is supposed to enable it with its policy. But the public sector is also supposed to play a role in certain areas where we call social enterprise, like the protection of your power sector. It's a security issue. The protection of your reserves is a security issue. So these are the things that would keep a country going.
But in the event where you don't have enough money to even do the basics, you heard Dr. Yusuf talking about the fact that we don't even have enough money to service our debts, much less do the significant things that need to be done.
It calls for the discipline that we're talking about now. You know, what priorities are we borrowing for? Are you borrowing to pay salaries, or you are borrowing to carry on capital projects that in the long term will generate the kind of resources that will sustain a country?
But you know that that's what we have heard from the former Minister of Transport concerning the facilities we took for building the railways and all of those things. And
I have no problem with the intention of what you take a loan for. I have a problem in the sustenance of such things. Today, you have taken loans to build Abuja, Kaduna rail project. It's not running at the moment. Who is paying? We are going to pay, whether you like it or not. We are going to pay. You are taking monies to build projects that you have not put adequate provisions for its security to protect it, short, medium, and long term. That's the question. You know, you can't say you've taken funds from development partners to build roads that you know that in the next 2 years, you are back to that road again. Someone is paying, and that's what is happening now, because you will move away from capital expenditure to recurrent expenditure, and you will spend a lot more on recurrent expenditure because you just have people who will not do anything and will be definite to get their pay at the end of the month. But if you are putting some form of resources in places where it will be private sector driven, not private sector run, I mean private sector driven. For example, you are bringing in all players, you put a rail project and you're putting other players to run in it. Everyone's interest will be encapsulated in it. But the issue is that where there's one person who determines everything, you want to run a monopoly of a place where you say you are liberal, then you have problems.
Okay. Well, Dr. Yusuf, looking at the, what you call rhetorics that have been, released by the political parties, especially for the national elections so far. One of them has withdrawn its manifestos and says they need to do some work on it before they release it again, and that's another one that is saying we're going to release it in the course of this month of November. Seeing what you have seen so far from those that you have seen and those that are being reviewed and all, how persuaded are you, how convinced are you that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how long this tunnel is?
Well, I can see some light at the end of the tunnel because looking at all the frontline candidates, I can see some varying degrees of private sector bias in terms of their knowledge, in terms of their exposure. I can also see the fact that, well, apart from the manifesto, because, anybody can get a good consultant to put together a manifesto. Apart from the manifesto, the capacity to put a team together, not based on ethnicity, not based on party affiliation, not based on tribe, a team that are competent, that have proper understanding, and that have the freedom to be able to deal with issues of economic policy implementation, and all of that. I can see that at least in some of the frontline candidates. They have that capacity to put a team together. Because one of the challenges we have today is not lack of good policy documents. if you pick the ERGP, if you pick the development plan, we have excellent documents. But those documents are just gathering dust. Nobody is, playing or acting on those documents. People just wake up, walk to the president, get approval for some policy, and it becomes policy. Or you have people around who don't even have proper understanding of the economy, dictating the pace of how the economy should be run. So, but we are likely to see a shift, from that. That is what I'm thinking. But again, I think that the candidates or the political parties also need to manage expectations, because some very difficult decisions will have to be taken. And the situation as it is already extremely very bad in terms of the social condition of the citizens. So how they will deal with that is left for us to see. And we have to also see a lot more in the area of policy, macroeconomic policies, foreign exchange policy, because we have to move completely away from the current foreign exchange policy, because it has been almost a disaster in terms of the impact on investment environment, the impact on investors' confidence.
Dr. Yusuf, allow me to
inflow of foreign investment.
Just 1 second. I mean, you said something earlier. My apologies. You said something earlier about the fact that we don't have a dearth of excellent policies and documents and all of that. It's always in the execution. One of the things that I think we have had, I mean, you are also aware, and we've perhaps spoken to it a number of times, that some of the issues we're contending today didn't just start. Some of them have been on 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. The ASU strike issue, for instance, has been on for the upwards of 40 years. So one is wondering how these policies cascade down to the ministries, departments, and agencies, to the ports, to the borders, to the immigration, to customs, and all those things. Perhaps that's one of the challenges that we've had over time. How do you see that playing out? Because it is one thing for the policy to go out. It's another thing altogether for that policy to be actioned.
No, that's an institutional issue. Because no matter how good your policies are, if your institutions don't have capacity, you can't achieve anything. If you have a good policy and you just go and bring your relation or somebody because he contributed to the victory of the party, and you put the person there, you're not likely to get any results.
Okay.
So we need a system, we need institutions that will be merit-driven, institutions that have capacity. So it's an institutional problem.
All right.
If we see any aspect of government that is failing, it's essentially about the capacity of the institutions. And the institutions is made up of people. Depends on who is leading the institutions. What kind of staff do they have? And how well motivated are they? All of these things have to go together. Okay. So it's an institutional problem.
Okay.
When you have this decoupling or disconnection between the policies and what is happening in reality.
Okay. Well, I believe my colleagues in Abuja will want to join the conversation, but before then, let me ask you the same question. You seems to be agreeing with Dr. Yusuf.
Yes, I do. I do. In totality, I do.
But then what do we need to do because unless the capacity of the institutions that will execute the policies are up to par, it's just going to be, as you said earlier, another document on the shelf.
But I think you should enhance the capacities of those institutions. It's not as if we don't have the competence. It's just we've been placing people at the wrong places. So some persons find some agencies or ministry or departments favorable to them. You post them there. They sit down like lame dogs. Prevent those who have the capacity to do their jobs. You know, and that was what called for some autonomy in certain government departments and agencies. You know, you can't do that in FIRS, for example. You can't do that in NCC, for example. But there are other institutions that require that level of autonomy and power given to them to drive the process. So we have a lot of agencies, departments and agencies today that are sitting as lame ducks because the institutional strength is clearly lacking. Competence speaks to policy.
So how do these issues that you gentlemen have raised, what can the political aspirants, the presidential aspirants do about it?
Get a proper head of service. The office of the head of service has an establishment department that knows everyone's competence in the Nigerian civil service to date. They know everyone by their qualifications, by training, and they know who to place at the right department. So if you become the president today, all you need to do is get your head of service to sit with you. And you will place the right persons and you get the results that you want.
Okay. Well, Dr. Yusuf, another issue around who becomes president or not is that of collaboration with states. So over the years, it will seem like we always I hear body language, and I'm wondering exactly what that means, because the laws are clear, the policy direction is clear, what the policies are supposed to achieve are clear, the KPIs are there, the JDs for whoever is supposed to do what is clear. So collaboration with states sometimes, I don't know what you think of that between the federal and the state governments. What do you think is lacking that needs to be worked on? Because development actually happens at the states, because that's where the lives of people are directly impacted.
Yes, the good thing is that some or many of the major candidates or major parties have been talking about evolution of powers. Some call it restructuring, they call it all sorts of names. But the whole idea is to strengthen the capacity of the states to be able to do a lot more, to be able to be a lot more creative, a lot more resourceful, by virtue of the opportunities that are open to them to generate and also optimize the use of resources in their domains. I think that, for me, is a very good pointer. Because part of the reasons that have weakened the state is the over-centralization of power and resources at the center. So if we see any of them that eventually wins, truly and sincerely commit to this evolution of powers, the process has already started. You have this constitutional review process ongoing now, where a lot of these things are being moved from exclusive list to concurrent list. If we're able to achieve that, we are likely to see a lot more creativity, innovation, and even competition among the states, which will help to optimize resources. And some of the candidates have been talking as if they are the one that will do everything. They talk about education, they talk about agri. They are not talking so much about this issue of the role of the subnationals.
Well, I guess it's...
federal government cannot do everything.
Exactly. So I guess it's ongoing conversation, because this is just one of several, as I've said a few other times, because one wonders exactly how much really can just one person do. We have to anchor at this point, because there is some issue that's been going on all morning, and we need to talk a little about that before we go. Dr. Muda Yusuf, Director General, CPPE, thank you so much for your time this morning. As well as Dr. Monday Michaels Ashibago, CEO Billbox, and former spokesman NASMI. Thank you again for your time. Chamberlain.
All right, the protest by Air Traffic Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, who are working with by Courtney Aviation Services, currently going on at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport 2, that's MMA 2. There's one and then there's two, so this is where by Courtney services are provided. And so these are the workers who say that they are processing the disengagement of about 37 of them, from what they tell us. They say that certain processes that were not followed, and so they have been here I think some say between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., but way before some of the first flights of the airlines, which were scheduled to take off by about 7 a.m. So a lot of those flights were disrupted, and things haven't gone smooth ever since. But our aviation correspondent tells us that at the moment, the commandant is trying to call them into a meeting, trying to advise caution as they proceed with the protest. But yeah, she is right there and then getting us updates, which we will bring you as we go on. But at the moment, this is what is going on at MMA2.
Indeed, a number of airlines have already issued statements asking you to stay with them as they keep you updated with regards to the schedule of your flights. One of them is Ibom Air, which has issued a statement saying this is to bring to the attention of our esteemed passengers and the public that our operating terminal out of Lagos, the Murtala Mohammed Airport 2, operated by Courtney Aviation Services Limited, has been completely closed off to workers and passengers alike by the labor union very early this morning. Efforts are currently being made to resolve the situation. However, please note that this action will greatly impact our flight scheduled in and out of Lagos. We also know that by Courtney Services has also been responding to the situation. They also issued a statement yesterday, some of which you already took the details earlier.
Yes.
But it was to the effect that I think they say that they believe that the unions will not participate in anything unlawful. I guess they're saying that this particular protest is unlawful, but yeah. Perhaps you want to read some details of that particular statement, Chamberlain.
Well, yes, because by Courtney, in the statement they sent to us this morning, indicated there that they had followed through with the processes, and they were surprised themselves seeing that the members embarked upon this strike, and they advising them to be cautious and not to disrupt services or movements from everyone else who will be using the services. So we'll bring you more on that as we get them. So from there on, we just have to read some messages for you. This is by Professor Enahena concerning some of the matters we discussed this morning. He says the economic agenda should start with grow the capacity to electricity, cuts interest rates on borrowing to single digits. Governments must invest in SMEs, diversify the economy, deal with oil thefts and systemic corruption. Invest in human capacity development is a must as well.
Well, this one from Festus Akimboyewa says, our next president must have the skills and energy to arrest the untold hardship imposed on Nigerians and the psychodrama that has made our country a laughingstock. The hard work must start from day one of the next administration, but it won't be a walk in the park.
This one is from John Ogolo, who says about the same issue. In order to fix the Nigerian economy, in order to fix Nigerian economic problems, there is urgent need to fix our politics and governance structures, since these will determine the business and investment environment in the country. We may not be able to change our political structures now, but whichever party is voted into office in 2023 must pursue vigorous political reforms that will translate into progressive economic development and prosperity. You have your mail as well, Henry, but unfortunately we're unable to take it today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Well, I sincerely hope that you don't have to travel today, but if you do, I hope you're not traveling through the Lagos airport. If you are, well, my apologies, or shall I say my sympathies with you. Thank you so much for watching this morning. Whatever happens today, please keep your head up. I'm Maokwe Ogu Yusuf.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for watching. I am Chamberlain Musa. Bye.